It all started on a Tuesday. A perfect, unassuming, spectacularly beige Tuesday. The sun was doing that nice, gentle, late spring thing where it warms your face, but doesn't try to melt it. I was on my front porch, which is really just a fancy word for a concrete slab with a roof, engaged in my sacred morning ritual. Drinking lukewarm coffee in a pair of faded Star Wars pajama pants and a t-shirt I'm pretty sure I got for free at a 5K. I didn't actually run. I'm a graphic designer, which means I work from home. This allows me to live in this neighborhood, Oakwood Preserve, a place where the houses are all just slightly different shades of taupe, and the lawns are greener than a leprechaun's tuxedo. The price of admission for this slice of suburban heaven? The HOA. And the only sound breaking the serene, surgically enforced silence was the tinkle-tinkle of a small set of bamboo wind chimes. They weren't much. 6 little tubes of hollowed-out bamboo, a gift from my late Aunt Patty. She'd picked them up on a trip to somewhere I couldn't pronounce. They didn't so much chime as thud. They sounded like a sleepy, slightly out-of-tune fairy tripping over a log. It was, in a word, harmless, which is exactly when the electric whine of an approaching golf cart shattered the peace. I didn't even have to look. You can feel her presence, like a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure or the feeling you get right before you sneeze. Brenda. She rolled to a stop on the sidewalk, her cart humming with the silent menace of a predator drone. Brenda was our HOA president, a woman who looked like she'd been assembled from a kit of spare ruler parts. She wore a visor, a baby blue polo shirt tucked aggressively into pleated khaki shorts, and a digital watch she used to time people's dog walks. Her face, as always, was set in an expression of pleasant, borderline psychotic disapproval. "Good morning, Mark," she said. Her voice was all sugar, but the kind that gives you instant cavities. "Morning, Brenda. Beautiful day." She didn't look at the sky. Her eyes, magnified by a pair of wire-rimmed glasses, were locked on the porch roof, on the chimes. "It was," she said, letting the words hang in the air like a bad smell. "Quite a noisemaker you have there." I looked up at the bamboo. A gentle breeze made them clack softly. "Oh, the chimes? They're bamboo. A gift from my Aunt Patty." "Yes, well," Brenda produced a clipboard, her personal Excalibur. "We've had some concerns from neighbors." I glanced left. The Millers were at work. I glanced right. Mrs. Henderson was 90, and as far as I knew, completely deaf. "Concerns? From who?" "That's confidential, of course," she smiled, a thin reptilian action. "The issue, Mark, is the persistent auditory intrusion. Oakwood Preserve values its tranquility. It's in the mission statement. Page 1. I sipped my coffee. "Brenda, with all due respect, a squirrel fart is louder than this." Her smile didn't just fade, it inverted, collapsing into a small, tight black hole of pure offense. "That is grossly inappropriate. The fact remains, it's a nuisance. Bylaw 4.7.b. You'll be receiving an official notice." "A notice? For this?" I gestured at the chimes, which had gone completely silent, as if in shame. "We value compliance, Mark. Good day." She put the golf cart in reverse, gave me one last look that said, "I've got my eye on you, you deviant," and whined away down the street, off to terrorize someone's non-conforming mailbox or overly vibrant welcome mat. I stood there for a long time. The silence on the porch was deafening. The letter arrived 2 hours later, hand-delivered to my mailbox, encased in a plastic sleeve to protect it from the elements. It was bright, hazard orange. It used words like cease and desist, and immediate remediation required, and fines to be levied. It cited Bylaw 4.7b, which apparently banned any device, man-made or otherwise, that produces audible sound intended to be carried by ambient wind currents. Intended. That was the word. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. She'd come after Aunt Patty's Chimes, my one little piece of non-taupe, non-sterile personality. I went back out onto the porch. I looked at the little bamboo chimes. Then I looked at the orange letter. I gently, almost lovingly, untied the knot and took the chimes down. The porch felt sterile, defeated. I went inside, the orange letter crinkling in my fist. Tranquility, huh? I muttered to the empty kitchen. We'll see about that. I was a man who designed logos for mid-level dental supply companies. I was quiet. I paid my dues on time. I recycled. But Brenda had just pushed the wrong button. She had declared war on a man who had high-speed internet and an unhealthy amount of free time. She wanted tranquility. I was going to give her tranquility. But first, I was going to have to read the fine print. That night, my kitchen table looked like a doomsday prepper's war room. I had a bottle of mid-shelf whiskey, a glass, and the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions for Oakwood Preserve. It was a 3-inch white vinyl binder. It weighed more than my laptop. It had a gold-embossed logo on the front that I, as a designer, found deeply offensive. It was the Bible of bad ideas, the manual for manufactured misery, and I was going to read every single mind-numbing word. I poured a glass of whiskey. Neat. Okay, you monsters, I whispered to the binder. Let's dance. The first 40 pages were just legal definitions. What constitutes a dwelling versus a structure. The precise definition of common area. A surprisingly long section on vermin, which seemed to include squirrels, rabbits, and any other rodent not explicitly approved in writing by the board. I took a sip. I flipped to the good stuff. Section 4, Nuisances. My eyes scanned the page. 4.1. No trash receptacles visible from the street, except on designated collection days between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. 4.2. No basketball hoops, permanent or temporary. 4.3. No unsightly lawn ornaments, with a 4-page addendum defining unsightly, which apparently included gnomes, flamingos, and anything excessively whimsical. It was a masterpiece of joy-sucking legalese. I needed an ally. I picked up my phone and speed-dialed my best friend, Dave. Dave lived 2 towns over in a blessed, non-HOA neighborhood where people were allowed to, God forbid, paint their front doors colors other than Greiga or slightly darker Greiga. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey, you finally decide to leave that beige prison of yours? Dave, I'm in, I said, my voice low. I'm in deep. What are you talking about? Are you drunk? It's 8:30. I'm reading the binder, Dave. The covenant. There was a long pause. Oh no, what did she get you for? Were your recycling bins out at 7:01 p.m.? The chimes, I said darkly. What chimes? Aunt Patty's chimes? The little bamboo ones. The ones my kid's hamster could drown out? The ones that sound like a wooden skeleton trying to tiptoe? The very same. She called them an auditory intrusion and cited 4.7b. Dave whistled. Man, she's escalating. So what, you're moving? No, I said, taking a gulp of whiskey. I'm fighting. I'm reading the manual. I'm finding a way. Mark, my man, that's not how this works. You can't fight them. They are the rules. They're like the Borg, but with polo shirts. You'll be assimilated. Just pay the fine and, I don't know, take up a silent hobby, like staring at a wall. No, I'm going to find it. There's always a loophole. These things are written by lawyers, but they're lazy lawyers. They just copy and paste. Good luck, man. Call me when you're ready to start looking for apartments. He hung up. I turned back to the binder. My whiskey glass was empty. I refilled it. I flipped past the sections on approved shrubbery height, max 36 inches, satellite dish placement, must not be visible from any street, ever, and paint finishes, satin or eggshell only. And then I found it. Section 4.7. Auditory disturbances. I read 4.7a, no loud music, engines, or excessive celebration. And then 4.7b, the golden ticket. No device intentionally designed to create noise for aesthetic or other purposes, including but not limited to wind chimes, bells, or decorative whistles, shall be permitted. I read it again. And a third time. The whiskey, the rage, and my inner design nerd brain all clicked into place at the same time. Intentionally designed to create noise. My chimes were designed to make noise. That was their purpose. That's why they were banned. But what if something made noise, but that wasn't its original design purpose? What if the noise was just a side effect? An unfortunate, accidental, and completely by-law compliant consequence? My eyes lifted from the binder. I scanned my kitchen, the stainless steel dishwasher, the microwave, the toaster, the utensil caddy next to the stove. I stood up, a slow, maniacal grin spreading across my face. I walked over and pulled out a long, stainless steel whisk. I held it up. Its design purpose was to whip eggs, to blend vinaigrettes. I pulled out a soup ladle. Its design purpose was to serve soup. I pulled out a slotted spoon. Its design purpose was to drain pasta. Nowhere in the manual for OXO Good Grips 11-inch stainless steel whisk did it say intentionally designed to create noise when struck by another metal object. I went back to the phone and called Dave. Dude, I just got in bed, he mumbled. Dave, I said, my voice trembling with excitement. I'm gonna need a lot of spoons. Mark, how much whiskey have you had? No, listen, the bylaw. It's not about the noise, it's about the intent, the design intent. What are you? Whisks, Dave, ladles, spatulas, forks, an army of kitchen utensils. Their purpose is culinary. The noise is just ancillary. It's a happy little accident. There was a very, very long pause on the other end of the line. Mark, Dave said, his voice filled with a brand new, beautiful kind of respect. You are a sick, twisted, beautiful genius. What do you need? I need fishing line, I said, looking at the single whisk in my hand. And I need a way to get to a restaurant supply store, immediately. The next morning, I woke up with a whiskey headache and a mission from God. I took 2 Tylenol, chugged a glass of water, and made a list. It had 3 items. Thrift stores, restaurant supply absolute, total metallic saturation. My first stop was the Goodwill on the other side of the highway. I walked in and made a beeline for the housewares section. It was a glorious wasteland of mismatched plates, chipped mugs, and most importantly, kitchen utensils. There was a big plastic bin labeled assorted flatware, $0.25 each. I started digging. I wasn't picky. Forks, spoons, butter knives. If it was metal, it was coming with me. A woman next to me, who was looking for a replacement saucer for a tea set, gave me a wide berth. I was a man possessed, my hands clanging and clattering as I pulled fistfuls of metal from the bin. I moved on to the hanging utensils, a whisk here, a ladle there, a surprisingly large number of potato mashers. I grabbed them all. I went to the checkout with a shopping cart that sounded like a medieval knight falling down a flight of stairs. The cashier, a college kid with green hair and a nose ring, looked at the pile, looked at me, and just sighed. "Big dinner party?" she asked, her voice monotone. "You have no idea," I said. "It's for a sculpture, a very big sculpture. It's a statement piece." "Uh-huh." She started scanning, or rather just grabbing items and tossing them into a bag. "That'll be 112 pieces of assorted flatware, 14 whisks, 9 ladles, and 22 potato mashers." "Seriously, dude, what's with the mashers?" "It's conceptual," I said gravely. "It's about mashing the boundaries of art." She just stared at me. "Right. That's $51.75. I paid in cash and walked out, the heavy bags clanging with every step. I dumped the hoard into my trunk and went to the next thrift store. And the next. By noon, I had cleared out every Goodwill, Salvation Army, and hole-in-the-wall charity shop within a 15-mile radius. My trunk was a symphony of scrap metal. But it wasn't enough. Thrift store stuff was small. It was personal. I needed industrial. I needed things that had weight. That's when I went to Bargain Restaurant Supply, a giant, warehouse-sized building next to a carpet outlet. The sign in the window said, "Going out of business. Everything must go." It was a sign. I walked in, and it was like I had died and gone to heaven. This wasn't a place for home cooks. This was a place for frustrated line cooks and overworked caterers. The scale was magnificent. I grabbed a flatbed cart. I went to the small wares aisle. I found whisks, not little 11-inch whisks. I found 24-inch, heavy-gauge, stainless steel whisks that looked like they could be used to mix cement. I took 10. I found ladles with 2-ounce bowls, 4-ounce bowls, 8-ounce bowls. I found one, a punch bowl ladle, that was the size of a human head. It was beautiful. I took it. I found giant, perforated spoons for lifting things out of fryers. I found metal spatulas so big you could flip a whole Thanksgiving turkey with one. And then I found the motherlode. A 20-pound box of mismatched bulk flatware from a university cafeteria. It was just a cardboard box taped up with $100 scrawled on the side in marker. I didn't even look inside. I just heaved it onto my cart. I rolled my clattering, groaning cart to the checkout. The owner, a sad-looking man in a stained apron, was totaling up a stack of sheet pans for another customer. He saw my cart, and his eyes lit up for what was probably the first time in years. "Wow," he said. "You starting a very large, very confused kitchen?" "Something like that," I said. "Got any pizza peels?" "Pizza peels? You know, the big flat metal shovel things." "Aisle 7. But we've only got the 36-inch aluminum ones left." "Perfect." I returned with 3 of them. They looked like oversized medieval weapons. "All right," he said, ringing me up. Let's just call it $300. Honestly, you're doing me a favor. I don't know how I'd even inventory this. You need help getting it to your car?" "I think I can manage." I got home and opened my garage. I started unloading. Bag after bag, box after box, peel after peel. I dumped it all in the middle of the concrete floor. When I was done, I had a pile of metal that came up to my waist. It was a dragon's hoard. It was beautiful. I was standing there, admiring my work, holding a particularly menacing-looking meat tenderizer, when Dave pulled into the driveway. He'd texted that he was coming to see the crazy. He got out of his car, holding a six-pack. "Okay, so you bought some spoons. What's the plan? You gonna hang 'em from the... Oh my God." He stopped dead at the entrance to the garage. His mouth fell open. The six-pack dangled from his fingers. "Mark," he whispered. "Mark, this isn't a plan. This is a problem." This is what they show on the first 10 minutes of an episode of Hoarders. "It's compliance, Dave," I said, holding up the meat tenderizer. "It's malicious compliance. Look at this one." I held up one of the giant pizza peels. "This is going to be the base section." Dave just stared at the mountain of metal. There are hundreds. Thousands. How are you going to hang all this? You're a graphic designer. You know how to use Photoshop. You don't know how to do this." I looked at the pile. I looked at the flimsy aluminum eaves of my porch. Dave was right. I couldn't just nail these up. The weight would rip the gutter clean off. I needed a structure. I needed them to hang, to move, to sing. "You're right," I said, my grin returning. "I can't do this. I need a professional. I need a contractor." Dave shook his head, finally walking in and setting the beer on my workbench. "What kind of contractor builds a spoon chandelier monster?" "An artist," I said, pulling out my phone. "Or maybe just a guy who really, really hates HOAs." Finding the right person for this job wasn't going to be easy. I couldn't exactly go on Angie's list and search for installers of weaponized kitchenware. I needed someone old school, someone who worked with metal, didn't ask too many questions, and probably had a deep-seated distrust of authority. I went on Google Maps and typed in custom metal fabrication. I skipped the high-end places with fancy websites showing minimalist steel staircases. I scrolled down, way down, until I found a pin dropped in an industrial park on the other side of the train tracks. Sully's Welding and Fab. It had 2 reviews. One was 5 stars and just said, "Sully good." The other was 1 star and said, "Refused to fix my lawnmower, said it was stupid." He was perfect. I called the number. A voice that sounded like it had been gargling gravel and cigarette butts answered on the first ring. "Sully." Hi," I said. "My name is Mark. I have a custom fabrication job. It's residential." There was a heavy sigh on the other end. "Look, kid, I don't do iron gates. I don't do fancy spiral staircases. I fix tractors and I build dump truck beds. You want art? Call someone else." "It's not art, exactly," I said quickly. "It's structural. I need to hang a significant amount of weight from my eaves, a lot of assorted metal objects." Another pause. This one was more curious. Assorted metal objects? Yeah, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "I'm gonna be in your area this afternoon. I'll swing by. What's the address?" An hour later, a truck that looked like it had lost a fight with a rhinoceros pulled up. It was a rusted-out 20-year-old Ford F-250 with a welding rig bolted to the bed. The man who got out matched the truck perfectly. He was Sully. He had to be in his late 50s, with a wild mane of graying hair, a beard that had food in it, and arms like tree trunks. He wore a grease-stained cat hat, a flannel shirt with the sleeves ripped off, and he was chewing on a toothpick like it owed him money. He ambled up my pristine concrete driveway, looking at my perfectly manicured by-law azaleas with open contempt. "You're Mark?" he grunted. "That's me. Thanks for coming, Sully. The project is in here." I opened the garage door. The overhead light flickered on, glinting off the mountain of stainless steel. Sully stopped. He didn't say anything for a full minute. He just looked. He tilted his head. He squinted. He spat the toothpick out onto my driveway. Then he turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "All right, what are you building, some kind of robot army?" "I need to hang all this," I said, gesturing to the pile. "From my eaves, artistically, so it moves in the wind." Sully stared at me, then at the pile, then at the taupe, sterile perfection of my house. He was connecting the dots. "This an HOA thing?" he asked. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my back pocket and pulled out the orange cease and desist letter. I handed it to him. He read it. His eyes scanned the jargon. Auditory intrusion, bylaw 4.7.b, immediate remediation. A slow, terrifying, utterly beautiful grin spread across his face. It was like watching a glacier crack open. "I hate HOAs, he cackled, a sound like a rusty engine turning over. He slapped me on the back, nearly sending me through the drywall. "Hate 'em, bunch of pocket Hitlers with clipboards. My sister-in-law? They tried to fine her. $200. Said her truck was leaking oil on the street. It was rain, Mark. It had rained that morning. They fined her. For rain." He was breathing heavily, his face red. "Okay, I'm in. We're not just gonna hang 'em. We're gonna build a cathedral." For the next 3 days, my house was a construction zone. Sully and his two-man crew, who were just younger, quieter versions of him named Skink and Mo, descended on my property. Brenda's golf cart must have been low on batteries, because the first day was blessedly quiet. "Your eaves are crap," Sully announced, tapping the aluminum soffit. "This'll rip right off. We gotta reinforce. We're gonna open this up, tie into the roof trusses directly. Build a whole new steel subframe." I just nodded. "Whatever you think, boss." The sound of sawing and drilling echoed through the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked out from behind their perfect, HOA-approved curtains. I just smiled and waved. Sully was a true artist. He wasn't just hanging metal. He was curating it. "See? You gotta have balance," he explained, holding up a giant whisk in one hand and a set of measuring cups in the other. "You put all the big stuff on one end, it'll just go thud. You gotta mix it up. Spoons near the forks. They harmonize, see? High-pitched. The whisks, they spin. They're the chorus. We'll put them in the middle." He and his team built a 30-foot custom-welded steel frame and bolted it so securely to my house that I was pretty sure the frame would be the only thing left standing in a tornado. Then they started the delicate work. They used high-tensile, 50-pound test fishing line. They drilled tiny holes in the handles of over 1,000 individual pieces of cutlery. They hung them in staggered, cascading layers. The big ladles and pizza peels were hung in the back, near the house, to catch the most wind. The forks and spoons were hung in a dense, shimmering curtain in the front. The whisks were hung on swivels. It was magnificent. It was a shimmering, metallic, 30-foot-long monster. It was like a giant, cybernetic pipe organ made of junk. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, as Sully was tightening the last bolt, the golf cart returned. Brenda rolled up, her face already pinched. "Mark," she called out, her voice tight. "What is all this? This is unapproved construction. You didn't file for an architectural review." I hopped down from the ladder where I was handing Mo a handful of spoons. "Morning, Brenda," I said, chipper. "No construction here. Just exterior decoration. Bylaw 9.4.c. Fully compliant. You should read it. It's a hoot." She looked at the thing that was now permanently affixed to my house. It was not yet making noise, as the air was dead calm. It just glittered. What is it?" she asked, her voice dripping with suspicion. "It's a sculpture," I said brightly. "It's called Culinary Winds. It's an homage to, food." Sully, from the roof, held up one of the giant industrial whisks. "Hey, lady," he bellowed, making Brenda jump. "You want one? We got extras." Brenda went pale. She looked at Sully, at his truck, which was, in fact, leaking oil onto the street, at the metal monstrosity on my house, and then at me. "This isn't over, Mark," she seethed. "It's not?" I said, feigning confusion. "Oh, good, because I was thinking of doing the back porch next." She didn't have a response. She just jammed her golf cart into forward and sped off, her tires squealing on the asphalt. Sully cackled from the roof. "That's one rattled old bird." "She'll be back," I said. "Oh, I know," Sully grinned, his teeth glinting in the sun. "But next time she'll have to shout." They packed up their tools. The bill was significant, but worth every single penny. "All right, kid," Sully said, shaking my hand. "She's all yours. We tuned her up best we could. The real show starts when that cold front moves in tonight." I stood in my driveway, alone, as the sun began to set. So sculpture was dead silent. Just a weird, shiny, metallic fringe on my taupe house. A flicker of doubt hit me. What if it didn't work? What if it just hung there? What if I'd just spent a small fortune to make my house look like the world's tackiest TGI Fridays? I went inside, made dinner, and waited. All it needed was wind. For 2 hours, nothing. A dead, suffocating calm settled over Oakwood Preserve. The silence was so perfect, so complete, I could hear Mr. Miller's television 2 doors down. I sat in my living room, curtains open, just staring at the silent metal. Brenda was probably at home, sipping chamomile tea, thinking she'd won. That I'd just made my house ugly for no reason. The thought was unbearable. And then, around 9:15 p.m., the first sign of the cold front arrived. It started small. A single leaf skittered across the driveway. The flag on the community center signpost, usually limp, gave a half-hearted thwack. A little breeze, a tiny gust, whispered across my porch. It began with a ting, a single high-pitched ting as a teaspoon tapped a fork. It was followed by a low, hollow dunk as one of the ladles swung gently against the brick. I stood up. The wind picked up, a real, sustained gust this time. And the symphony began. It wasn't a tinkle. It wasn't a chime. It was a clang. A clack, clack, clack. A jang, jang, jangle. The hundreds of spoons and forks created a sound like 1,000 tiny, angry skeletons having a tap-dancing competition. The whisks, spinning on their swivels, let out a high-pitched metallic screech. And then the bass section kicked in. The pizza peels and giant ladles swung, hitting each other with a deep, resonant dunk and whoomp. It was the most god-awful, ear-splitting, glorious noise I had ever heard. It was beautiful. I ran to the kitchen and threw open the window. The sound was loud. It wasn't just on the porch, it was in the house. The entire structure was vibrating gently, the sound waves traveling through the trusses Sully had bolted his frame to. It sounded like I was living inside a broken grandfather clock. My phone rang. It was Dave. I picked it up. "Mark!" he shouted over the line. "What in God's name is that?" "It's alive!" I roared back, laughing. "It's alive! Holy! I can hear it from my car. I'm 3 streets away. It sounds like a train derailing in a cutlery factory." "Isn't it amazing? It's definitely something, man. Good luck." He hung up, probably because he couldn't hear me anyway. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, went out onto the porch, and sat down in my chair. The wind was whipping now, and the sound was... it was overwhelming. It was a wall of pure, chaotic, metallic noise. It was glorious. I saw curtains twitch. Lights flicked on in houses down the street. People were definitely having their tranquility intruded upon. And then I saw it. The distant headlight of the golf cart flying down the street at a speed that was almost, certainly against the bylaws. Brenda's cart screeched to a halt at my curb. She didn't just get out. She launched herself out. She was no longer in her polo and shorts. She was wearing a pink bathrobe and what looked like fuzzy slippers. Her hair was in a net. She was furious. "Mark!" she shrieked, but her voice was almost completely swallowed by the clang-clack, dunk of the orchestra. I just sat there, sipped my beer, and smiled. "Shut it off!" she screamed, marching up my driveway. "Shut it off now!" I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, leaning against a post. I put a hand to my ear. "What?" I shouted back, grinning. "Sorry, Brenda. It's a bit breezy out here tonight." You monster! This is a nuisance! It's a horrible, horrible nuisance! It's 1,000 times worse than the Chimes!" The wind hit a high note, and a cluster of whisks went into a full-on screech. "A nuisance!" I yelled. "Brenda, I'm shocked. These are kitchen utensils. They're for culinary purposes. Are you anti-cooking, Brenda? Are you violating my right to air-dry my ladles?" She just stood there, on my lawn, vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage. Her mouth was opening and closing, but I couldn't hear a word she was saying. The sound was just too loud. "This isn't compliant," she finally managed to scream in a brief lull. "It's 100% compliant," I screamed back. "Read the manual. Bylaw 4.7b, intentionally designed to create noise. These were intentionally designed to mash potatoes. The noise is just an unintentional, if a bit enthusiastic, side effect." I'm not sure if she heard me. She just made a sound like a kettle boiling, a high-pitched that was, ironically, cuter than any noise Aunt Patty's chimes had ever made. "You will be hearing from our lawyers!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You will be fined! You will be removed!" "Have a great night, Brenda," I yelled, raising my beer in a toast. "Drive safe!" She stomped back to her golf cart, her fuzzy slippers slapping the pavement. She peeled out, which is a very hard thing to do in an electric golf cart, but she managed it, her motor's high-pitched whine adding a nice little harmony to the metallic symphony behind me. I sat back down. I took a long, slow drink of my beer. The wind howled, the forks clanged, the whisks screamed, the pizza peels dunked. It was, without question, the most tranquil night I'd ever had in Oakwood Preserve. The next morning, the wind had died down. My house was blessedly, almost disappointingly, quiet. The only sound was the gentle clink of a few spoons tapping each other, like a distant, sleepy alarm clock. The letter that arrived was not orange. It was a deep, angry, arterial red. It was taped to my front door. It informed me that I was in gross violation of, well, they seem to be just guessing now. They cited 4.7b, nuisances, 9.4.c, decorations, calling it non-conforming, and a new one, 2.1, general conduct, behavior detrimental to the community. I was being fined $500 to be paid immediately. I chuckled. Detrimental to the community. I spent the next hour crafting my response. I went to my computer and typed up a very polite, very formal letter. Dear HOA Board and Mrs. Brenda, it began, I am in receipt of your letter dated this morning. I must admit, I am confused. I have reviewed the bylaws you cited and find myself in full compliance. 1. Per 4.7.b, as I explained to Mrs. Brenda last night, these items are not designed to create noise. Their design intent is culinary. The noise is an unfortunate ambient wind-based side effect. 2. Per 9.4.c, exterior decorations are not explicitly defined or limited, only that they must not be in disrepair. I assure you, all my utensils are in excellent working order. 3. Per 2.1, I find my conduct to be perfectly pleasant. I am simply air-drying my kitchenware, vigorously. I will not be paying the $500 fine. However, in the spirit of community, I have attached documentation to help clarify my position. I printed the letter. Then I went to Wikipedia and printed the entire entry for spoon. I highlighted the section on its design and use. I did the same for whisk and ladle. I took my letter, the Wikipedia printouts, and a laminated copy of Bylaw 4.7.b, put them all in a nice manila envelope, and walked down the street to the HOA's office, a locked metal drop box outside the community pool. I slid it in. The ball was in Brenda's court. That night, the wind came back, and it brought friends. It wasn't just a breeze, it was a full-on gale. My house didn't just sound like a broken clock. It sounded like a building-sized tambourine being played by a very angry god. The clang, jang, scree-doonk was so loud, I had to turn on subtitles for my movie. I was halfway through, enjoying a bowl of popcorn and the feeling of my teeth vibrating, when my living room was suddenly filled with flashing blue and red lights. My heart leaped into my throat. The cops. This was an escalation I hadn't prepared for. This was no longer about bylaws and clipboards. I had, perhaps, gone too far. My stomach did a flip. What was the penalty for oral assault? Could I be arrested? A heavy bang, bang, bang on my front door was just barely audible over the din. I paused the movie, put my headphones down, and walked to the door. I took a deep breath. Be cool. You're compliant. Just be cool. I opened the door. 2 police officers stood on my porch. One was older, with a face that had seen everything and was tired of all of it. His name tag read Miller. The other was a rookie, young, and visibly, desperately trying not to laugh. His tag read Sanchez. "Sir!" Miller shouted, wincing as a pizza peel whomped against the brick. "Are you the homeowner?" "Yes, officer," I shouted back. "Is there a problem?" "We've got a, Miller looked at his notepad. "We've got a noise. Complaint. Several, actually, from, Mrs. Brenda and a few others." "A noise complaint?" I yelled, feigning shock. "From what? My television?" Miller just stared at me. He looked up at the clanging, screaming, shimmering curtain of metal. He looked back at me. "Sir, your neighbors are saying you built a spoon monster. His words, not mine." "It's not a monster, officer," I shouted. "It's art. Exterior decoration. Bylaw 9.4.c. Officer Sanchez coughed, turning his head, but I could see his shoulders shaking. Miller just sighed, a deep, weary sound that was almost lost in the chaos. Son, is this an HOA dispute? They started it, sir, I said, my voice full of righteous indignation. They came after my Aunt Patty's little bamboo chimes. They called them a nuisance. I was just trying to be compliant. Just then, a 50 mph gust hit the house. The sound was deafening. A giant 8-ounce ladle swung around and cracked into a perforated fryer spoon, and the resulting gong made Officer Sanchez jump a good 6 inches. Jesus! Sanchez yelled. Miller just rubbed the bridge of his nose. Sir, do you have any idea how loud this is? It's just the wind, officer. I can't control the wind. Miller sighed again. He looked at Sanchez. Check the city ordinance. Sanchez pulled out his radio. Dispatch, what's the city code for residential noise? Ambient, like wind-driven? They both stood there, getting buffeted by the noise. Miller looked up at the structure. This is actually pretty well built. Who did the work? Sully's Welding, I yelled. He hates HOAs, too. Sanchez clicked his radio off. Dispatch says the city ordinance applies to persistent, amplified sound, like stereos or machinery. Intermittent noise like this is only a violation if it's over 80 decibels continuously. Miller looked at Sanchez. Is it continuous? Not really, sir, Sanchez said, grinning. It lulls, and then it gets real loud. It's intermittent. Miller stared at me. I stared back, trying to look as innocent as possible. Look, kid, Miller finally shouted. I don't know what kind of war you're in with your neighbors, and I don't care. Technically, as far as the city is concerned, you're not breaking the law. It's a civil matter. It's between you and your HOA. He jabbed a thumb over his shoulder. But your neighbor Brenda seems real upset. She's crying, actually. So, maybe think about that. He turned to Sanchez. Radio dispatch. Tell him it's a civil matter, and tell him to please stop calling us about the spoons. We're done here. They turned and walked back to their cruiser. As they were getting in, I saw Sanchez lean over to Miller. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw Miller crack a tiny smile. I closed the door, the sound of the metal symphony a warm, comforting blanket. I had won. The law, the real law, was on my side. I walked back to my couch, unpaused my movie, and turned the subtitles off. I didn't need them. I could hear just fine. The victory was sweet, but short-lived. Brenda couldn't use the police, so she fell back on the only power she had: bureaucracy. 2 days later, a notice was posted on every telephone pole and community mailbox. Emergency Board Meeting, Friday, 7:00 p.m. Agenda: Urgent Community Matter, Re 142 Oakwood Drive. That was my address. She had put a target on my back. Friday night, I put on my best blazer over a clean t-shirt. I grabbed my 3-inch white vinyl binder, and I walked to the community center. The rec room, a beige, windowless box that usually hosted gentle yoga for seniors, was packed. It was standing room only. I'd never seen more than 5 people in here at one time. Tonight, the entire neighborhood was here. The air was thick with tension, cheap perfume, and the smell of watery coffee from a Mr. Coffee machine in the corner. Brenda was at the front, sitting at a folding table with the other 2 board members, a nervous-looking accountant named Gary, and a woman who I'd only ever seen power walking. Next to Brenda sat a man I didn't recognize, He was thin, pale, and wearing a suit that was one size too big. He had a briefcase. He was the lawyer, the hired gun. He looked like a vampire on a budget. I found a spot along the back wall, binder tucked under my arm. "Order! Order!" Brenda said, banging a small wooden gavel that was clearly a prop. "We are here tonight to discuss a grave threat to our community." She proceeded to give the most dramatic, tearful speech I had ever heard. She talked about peace and tranquility. She talked about property values and our way of life. This individual," she said, pointing a trembling finger at me at the back of the room, "has seen fit to mock our rules, to mock us. He has installed a monstrosity, a metallic menace." "It's spoons, Brenda," someone shouted. "It is not just spoons," she shrieked back. "It is a cacophony. It is an auditory assault. He has brought industrial kitchenware into our beautiful residential neighborhood. He hung a pizza peel." A gasp went up from some of the residents. The sheer audacity. The lawyer leaned into his microphone. His voice was slick and oily. "Let me be clear. The board has full authority to levy fines and, if necessary, place a lien on the property of any homeowner found in gross violation. This sculpture is a clear and undeniable nuisance. It is unsightly, it is loud, and it is unapproved." He looked at me. "Mr. Mark, the board is giving you one final chance. Will you agree tonight to remove the installation and pay the accrued $500 fine?" The entire room turned to look at me. It was dead silent. Even the coffee machine stopped gurgling. I walked to the front, setting my white binder on the table with a heavy thud. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm. "Brenda, Gary, ma'am, Mr. Sloan," the lawyer hissed. "Mr. Sloan? I am frankly shocked. I'm shocked that we're all here, wasting a perfectly good Friday night." "This is no waste," Brenda snapped. "I am a compliant citizen," I continued, opening the binder. "I am a model homeowner. When I was told my humble bamboo wind chimes, which I'll remind you were a gift from my late Aunt Patty, were a violation, what did I do? I removed them. Immediately. And replaced them with this," the lawyer sputtered. "No," I said, holding up a hand. "I did my research. I consulted the manual, your manual." I tapped the binder. "I was told I could not have a device intentionally designed to create noise. So I didn't. I installed exterior decoration, as is my right under bylaw 9.4(c), which I have here." I held up a page. "And as for the noise, I'd like to direct you again to bylaw 4.7b. I reached under my blazer and pulled out a giant 24-inch industrial whisk. A woman in the front row gasped. "This," I said, holding it high, "was designed to beat eggs. Its primary, intended purpose is culinary." I reached back and pulled out the 8-ounce, head-sized ladle. This was designed to serve chili, or punch, maybe a very large soup." "This is ridiculous," the lawyer said, standing up. "No, this is compliance," I said, my voice rising. "This is strict adherence to the letter of the law. You wrote the rules, Brenda. I'm just following them. The noise is an unintentional side effect of the wind, which, last I checked, you do not have jurisdiction over. If you want to ban spoons, if you want to ban forks, if you want to ban whisks, then put it to a vote, right now. Let's see you tell this community they can't have cutlery." The room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Brenda was puce. The lawyer was shuffling papers, his slick composure gone. Then a man in the back stood up. It was my neighbor, Jim, a quiet guy, a guy Brenda had fined 3 times for his garden gnome. "He's right," Jim shouted. "He's absolutely right, and I'm sick of you fining me for Sir Reginald, Brenda. He's a whimsical gnome, and I like him." "Sit down, Jim," Brenda commanded. "No!" A woman from the front row stood up. "I'm with him. You told me my mailbox was non-compliant because the shade of black was too glossy." "My basketball hoop," yelled another guy. "My kids can't even play basketball." "You fined me for a brown patch on my lawn." "You said my welcome mat was overly vibrant." Suddenly, the entire room was on its feet. It was a full-blown peasant revolt. The rec room was in chaos. People weren't just yelling at Brenda. They were yelling at Gary, at the power walker, at the lawyer. All the pent-up petty frustrations of the last 10 years were exploding. "Order!" Brenda shrieked, banging her gavel. "Order!" But it was no use. The dam had broken. The lawyer was packing his briefcase. Gary looked like he was about to cry. The motion to fine me was never even voted on. The meeting just dissolved into chaos. I picked up my whisk and my ladle. I closed my binder. And I walked out of the rec room to the quiet, beautiful sound of a neighborhood taking its power back. Brenda, I heard, didn't leave her house for a week. There was an emergency e-vote, and she was respectfully asked to step down as president. Gary, the accountant, took over. His first act was to issue a moratorium on all fines related to exterior whimsy. The utensil-pocalypse, as Dave officially named it, stayed. My house was now a landmark. I'd see people drive by slowly, their windows down, listening. Some would laugh, some would shake their heads. But no one ever complained. The new normal in Oakwood Preserve was different. It was better. Jim's garden gnome, Sir Reginald, was back on his lawn. The guy down the street had his basketball hoop up, and I'd hear the thump, thump, thump of a ball in the evenings. The woman with the mailbox had repainted it a glorious, glossy jet black. The spell was broken. A few weeks later, I was back on my porch. It was a perfect Tuesday, just like the one where it all started. A nice breeze was blowing. The sound was, honestly, it wasn't even that bad anymore. I'd gotten used to it. The clang-jang scree had mellowed into a familiar metallic lullaby. Dave was over, and we were drinking beers, listening to the symphony. "You know," he said, taking a sip, "I think I'm gonna miss it when you finally take it down." I looked at him and smiled. "Take it down? Who said I'm taking it down?" Dave stopped, his beer halfway to his mouth. "Seriously? You're going to live with this? Forever? It sounds like a drum set falling off a cliff." "I don't know," I said, leaning back in my chair. "It's growing on me. Besides, I was talking to Sully last week." "Oh no. Yeah, he's got a line on some reclaimed copper pots. He says if we hang a few of those in the gaps, tune them just right, we could probably get a nice, strong C major chord out of the whole thing." Dave just stared at me for a long time. Then he shook his head, a slow grin spreading across his face. "You're a menace, Mark." I raised my bottle, toasting the spinning whisks and the gently swinging ladles. "It's the sound of freedom, man," I said, as a pizza peel dunked a low, perfect note. "The sound of freedom."